Test. Why did the
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Solomon AROKIARAJ. I'm Joint Secretary from the Ministry of Finance, Government of India. I'm delighted to be here today at the inaugural day of the Paris Infra Week to share with you all the remarkable achievements of the Infrastructure Working Group under the G20 Indian Presidency. As you all may be aware, the G20 Infrastructure Working Group has over the years deliberated on various aspects of infrastructure investments, like developing infrastructure as an asset class, promoting quality infrastructure investment, and identifying innovative instruments for mobilizing financial resources. Today, more than 50% of the world's population live in cities. This trend is expected to continue, with the urban population more than doubling its current size by 2050, at which point nearly 7 out of 10 people will live in cities. With more than 80% of the global GDP generated in cities, urbanization can be a sustainable growth tool through increased productivity and innovation if managed properly. However, the spread and the scale of urbanization poses several challenges, such as meeting the accelerated demand for affordable housing, climate-resilient infrastructure, including water systems, transport systems, basic services, and jobs, particularly for the nearly 1 billion people, urban poor, who live in informal settlements. Therefore, cities that are being built today and the existing ones need to keep in their strategies the issues of sustainability, inclusivity, and resilience as central focus. Climate change and energy transition add a new dimension to the city's capacity to build, modernize, or upgrade their infrastructure. Inclusive cities are built on equitable access to resources, spaces, and opportunities. Resilient cities withstand the shocks to the environmental and economic systems and recover quickly. The elements of sustainability would embed the principles of optimal use of limited natural resources and circularity. Creating sustainable cities aligned with UN SDG 11, that is Sustainable Cities and Communities, requires massive investment. According to UN Habitat, the total investment need for infrastructure and SDG 11 commitments is estimated at $38 trillion for the years between 2020 and 2030, with the total investment gap of around $5.6 trillion. A significant part of the urban infrastructure financing across the world is currently funded through public sources. There is a critical need to attract private financing for urban infrastructure by formulating long-term strategic planning, creating an enabling policy environment, improving the creditworthiness of the cities, creating a pipeline of investable projects, launching thematic or sustainable bonds, and deepening capital markets. Therefore, the G20 Indian Presidency made a conscious choice to include urban infrastructure as the focus area of infrastructure agenda and chose the theme of financing cities of tomorrow, sustainable, inclusive, and resilient as a flagship priority. The G20 IWG provided a global platform where successful implementation of innovative financing mechanisms for urban infrastructure from developed and developing economies could be exchanged. There are four major outcomes that I want to highlight. The first one is the G20 principles on financing cities of tomorrow. Globally, typology of cities vary by their size and stage of economic development. In order to guide various stakeholders in planning and financing urban infrastructure, the G20 principles uses urban planning as an effective tool to make the cities of tomorrow inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. Thereby, they open up investment opportunities. Then, maximizing investment efficiency by judicious use of public and private sources of funding, best allotting to social or commercially viable project. And third, creating a conducive environment for attracting private investment by enhancing the creditworthiness and making available investable projects that offer optimal risk-adjusted returns to private capital. Strengthening institutional preparedness by adoption of technology, transparent procurement, and efficient dispute resolution mechanisms, and augmenting technical and institutional capacities of the city administrations. Second outcome, complementing these principles, the OECD report on financing cities of tomorrow provides a compendium of best practices and innovative financing solutions for cities. This report covers 17 different case studies from global cities on how they leveraged various policy instruments, private financing to fund their infrastructure requirement, be it urban policy framework, municipal bonds, and sustainable finance instruments like sustainability-linked bonds, green bonds, and blue bonds. Third, managing the challenges of urban infrastructure development and successful financing requires institutional and human resource capacity. The G20 Asian Development Bank Framework on Capacity Building of Urban Administration is a customizable framework aiming at guiding local governments in assessing their capacity need and enhancing it. This robust framework adopts a Plan, Do, Check, Act (PDCA) approach that focuses on recognizing the key functions and critical elements, assessing the capacity needs and gaps using checklists, develop a capacity building plan, implement, monitor, and evaluate it. There are 22 global best practices documented that can be applied across cities of all sizes and at different developmental stages. Fourth, the G20 World Bank report on enablers of inclusive city provides an empirical analysis on how levels of access to urban services, markets, and spaces vary across and within countries and cities, and highlights that inadequate planning, compounded by dysfunctional land and housing markets, contribute to lack of inclusiveness. The report provides a policy compass helping various stakeholders to better plan, connect, and finance urban infrastructure services. In addition to the above key outcomes, IWG also offered a chance to progress quality infrastructure indicators with more pilot studies across different countries and different sectors, compilation of different infrastructure taxonomies. There were discussions around how to define infrastructure. So we have documented across countries and different international organizations how they define and use. And 2023 G20 OECD Infrastructure Investor Dialogue on attracting private capital towards urban infrastructure and an updated infra tracker tool. India G20 presidency has been further able to enrich this global infrastructure agenda by expanding the themes for deliberation under infrastructure working group to include the voice of Global South and their ultimate beneficiaries, that is the citizens. It has championed the principle of shared prosperity by focusing on inclusive, resilient, and sustainable urban infrastructure, which puts people at the heart of infrastructure growth, reflecting this year's G20 presidency theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumpakam, that is, one earth, one family, and one future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this, on the outcome of the G20 by Shri Solomon AROKIARAJ, Joint Secretary, Infrastructure Policy and Planning Division, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. Thank you. And now we're going to go into a deep dive and talking with a discussion on something that you've heard a lot about during the day today. I'm sure you're going to be hearing a lot during the week of Infra Week. Next here on program is the discussion on hydrogen energy global initiatives. I'm inviting here on stage the moderator, Jeffrey Levesque, partner, CMS Francis Lefebvre. Please.